Hey everyone, Mike Miller with the Herald Times, joined by IU basketball columnist Jeremy Price, coming to you after, a 75-63 Michigan win over Indiana here on Sunday afternoon at Assembly Hall, the second to last home game of the year, and like we said the other day after Purdue, it was a must-win game. You couldn't drop both games this week. Preferably you get Purdue and maybe even Michigan too, but they got nothing this week. 0 for 2, lost 3 in a row. What, 4 or 5 of the last 6?
5 of 6, yeah.
So this is
basically, it's not getting any better. I mean, maybe it got more competitive against Wisconsin and Purdue. I wouldn't say that today, really.
No,
I mean,
it never felt like. Tom Crean said that the largest deficit they had was 13 points, and a couple times it was half of that. But and I think Tom Crean even said it at several points. It felt like we were never really out of it. Well, truthfully, I don't know about you guys. It never felt like they were ever in it.
No.
Not even from the very beginning.
No.
So this was just one of those games where Indiana never settled in, didn't hit shots that, it often hits. I mean, it was a pretty pitiful shooting performance from James Blackman, Robert Johnson. Thomas Bryant didn't have a great game. Really, outside Deron Davis, and I think Josh Newkirk had some spurts. No one really played well. And like I said, just never really felt like, even though it wasn't an insurmountable deficit, insurmountable, am I saying that wrong? Even though the deficit didn't get too deep, never really felt like they were going to chip away at it.
No. And the problem, it's sort of, that's maybe part of the problem with this team is right now you don't have enough confidence that offensively they can put something together. When they do finally put something together offensively, you have no confidence that they're going to put anything together defensively to get enough stops to help them. And in the middle of all that, you've got all these ridiculous turnovers that just continue to plague this team, and you can't put together a run if you can't keep possession of the ball. It's really very simple, and yet apparently a great mystery for this team in order to accomplish any one of those things, let alone all of them in concert together.
I'll never understand it, man. I think a certain amount of turnovers are going to be a product of the way they play, no doubt. 15, 20 points off
but this
turnovers.
Team's not scoring in transition right now. I mean, it's not like, we're scoring all these points off the fast break and sometimes we throw it away. It's just sometimes we throw it away.
It's carelessness. I mean, there's just a distinct lack of just valuing the basketball. They just do not do that several times. Like you said, the turnovers today were just ridiculous, many of which were just very unforced, just thrown away, just carelessly handled. And we could just recycle those words basically after every game because it's a team that it's a product of who they are, that they've never established any sort of positive identity. The only identity they have is carelessness, frankly, and getting injured, because they like to hammer that point home a lot here too.
Is getting injured an identity?
They're trying to make it one.
I guess.
With all the talk of injuries, that's the way Indiana would like to present it. It seems, but frankly, it's just a very.
But in spite of that, I mentioned this in my column today. I mean, you still have 4 of the 5 starters you had in the season opener starting this game, and I realize that Juwan Morgan is maybe not 100%, and maybe James Blackman isn't 100% or whatever, but you're not completely devoid of pieces here, folks. I mean, you're not sticking Tim Priller in the starting lineup or even playing him at all or anything. You are leaning a bit on Zach McRoberts, but not sure what that says about having a scholarship player who you can't play and walk-ons who you do play, but that's a whole nother matter. But, this team isn't completely devoid of talent is the point. There's something there, but there's not any kind of cohesion or chemistry like we thought might be there when the season started. That's for sure.
Yeah, we've talked in the past, I believe, on some of these previous Scoop Talks, just about the pieces not fitting, and it's just a weird season, man. There's definitely some talent here, and when people have asked why don't they play better defense, I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, there are guys here clearly capable, offensively guys who are capable, and it was probably an off night when you look at the shooting numbers from Rob Johnson and James Blackman. Johnson seems like he's in a real funk right now. Blackman, I think, it appeared he just wasn't close to 100% today. Just watching him move around, but it was.
Yeah, obviously the three-point shooting is off, 4 of 19 from 3, but you still went 25 of 51 from the field overall, which if you do some basic math there, that means on 2-pointers, they were 21 of 32. That's pretty good. That's roughly 67% if my math class ever taught me anything.
42 points in the paint. I mean, Deron Davis was playing. He was Deron Davis. He gave you a Deron Davis game, and
and they got some stuff from Duran. They occasionally got something from Thomas Bryant, but not consistently. But this team doesn't seem to. And Juwan Morgan actually gave them some stuff today, because this was their advantage today against Michigan, was the inside game. Michigan is not a real strong inside team, other than Mo Wagner. Everybody else they have to run out there as a big is very perimeter oriented, and even Wagner is largely perimeter oriented to a large degree. So that was Indiana's strength, that was their advantage, and yet at times it seemed like such a struggle to feed the post. Nobody seems to know how to make an entry pass. Nobody seems to know how to post up. I mean, how many times did Indiana wind up getting the ball to somebody posted up 17 feet from the basket? And then you ask them to dribble to back their man down. And by that time, Michigan sends a double team, and then all chaos ensues, basically.
And the entry pass, too. I mean, there were times of just guys on the wing, McRoberts, and Morgan had a turnover. I mean, there was just so many situations where you get late in the shot clock because guys just can't get the ball where it needs to go. That happened several times.
And then occasionally they wouldn't look inside first. They were looking at other stuff, and then by the time they looked inside, it wasn't open anymore because they waited too long. There's just a sync, a chemistry, a mindset, whatever you want to call it, that is just off right now. And I don't know if it's fixable. I don't think it's fixable.
I just think this is kind of who this team is at this point. I mean, there's enough evidence to go on that this is just not. This team just doesn't fit together for whatever reason. I mean, you can bring up the injuries, whatever. I just don't think, for whatever reason, this team just really fits or gels right now. And it's odd, just considering how good we thought this team could be, even with some of the injuries. Much earlier in the year. You spoke of Mo Wagner earlier. He's a pretty big guy. Just ask Tom Crean, right?
Yeah.
Man, that was something. You led your column with it, and it was. Yeah, that was like the metaphor for the season right there.
Yeah. Mo Wagner knocks down a three and knocks down Tom Crean. And much hilarity ensues on social media as a result. Predictably, I guess. But, I mean, that was kind of it in a nutshell, Indiana's pretty much on its rear end at this point.
Yeah. Where do they stand, do you think, in the NIT? I mean, they're certainly not a shoe-in, right?
Right now, are they a shoe-in for the NIT? Sure, but when you look at the upcoming schedule, where do they go from here? They've got to win, including the Big Ten tournament, they've got to win at least 2 more games just to stay over 500 to qualify for the NIT. And if you can tell me, you might be able to tell me that Indiana's going to win 1 more game, but I bet you can't even name which one it's going to be.
Yeah.
If they do that, and they might win 2 or 3, maybe they'll surprise us. Who knows? I wouldn't bet on it, but
they are certainly now right on that. They're kind of right on the edge now, playing on the first day of the Big Ten tournament too. So
yes, and this is very quickly headed in the exact same direction as we were in 2014 when Indiana missed the NCAA tournament. Again, a team that you expected more from, thought more was capable of, and it just faded down the stretch into just a mismatch. Again, it seemed that year, I think chemistry was the number one issue, and it seems like that has reared its ugly head again this year, which is a little bit strange to me because I kind of understood where some of the chemistry issues were at that time. Mm-hmm. I don't understand that as much with this group because they seem to be more like each other more, get along better than that group. That group was just sort of, everybody was going 5 different directions and so on and so forth. But this group, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it seems like they get along. They say the right things. They want to do the right things. They're, we're not around them all the time, but I think we've around them enough that most of them are pretty good kids, pretty likable, and, mm-hmm. not much to complain about on that front, but it's just not working for whatever reason.
It's not. Yeah. How about does it?
Yep.
This was Michigan's second win in the last 19 trips to Bloomington. I mean,
it was.
I was watching John Beeline. Just kind of, some of the Michigan writers were just talking to him about what is it about Assembly Hall that is so hard to makes it so difficult to play there. And he was just saying, I don't know. Some of his best teams, he was saying, have come in here and looked just didn't look very good at all. I mean, you look at some of the the Trey Burke teams. You get Nick Stauskas, all those teams a few years ago coming in here. So this has been a tough place to play. Not today. Not today. Indiana really just didn't really resist. Even from the very beginnings of this game, it was just kind of, you could just sense that something wasn't.
Yeah, they were just flat. And I thought, a lot of the shots, we talked about the poor shooting from 3, a ton of those were short. Maybe all of those were short. I mean, it just looked like a team with tired legs, whether it was the Wisconsin and Purdue games, being on the road, whatever, took it out of them. I'm sure they've been working hard in practice, but sometimes that can work to your detriment on game day.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the 1 o'clock start, whatever it was. Add that to the list of things that weren't good today.
Yeah, I caught pregame radio. Tom Crean was actually saying that these were 2 very intense days. He cut Saturday afternoon's practice short just because he was satisfied with the intensity. So it sounds like they were really working him a little bit here last couple days coming off Purdue, but didn't see the results here today when they needed them most. So from here, Indiana goes to Minnesota on Wednesday. And hey, that's a place where Indiana doesn't particularly play very well. So
a lot of teams don't play well there, but especially Indiana.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. 5 games left?
5 games
left. 5
left.
games left, 4 on the road, starting with Minnesota. So we'll be there. Talk later.